Hey folks, it's Jordy, the music director here at Spinnaker Radio.
And I'm Sydney, the general manager here at Spinnaker Radio.
And today we'll be interviewing Ben Walsh of Tiger's Jaw. So, we're just going to start off with talking about kind of the course of your career. You guys have transitioned from a modern emo sound to what we kind of identify as a 90s college rock feel. And we were just kind of curious to know about the influences that inspired that transition, and especially because we know that you guys have transitioned from lead vocals from you to Brianna. So we were kind of curious as to what particular influences have inspired your transitions and sounds throughout the years.
So I think very, very early on, the first bands that I really clicked with on the radio when my mom would be driving, would be Fleetwood Mac and Tom Petty. It would just be classic rock radio kind of stuff. So I think that informed a lot of my early oh, this is rock music kind of vibe. I think once I started listening to the radio on my own, it was late 90s, and there was Gin Blossoms and Goo Goo Dolls and bands like that that sort of informed my early tastes. Third Eye Blind was a big one too. And then I think once I started playing guitar and drums when I was in 7th or 8th grade, I got into more of the sort of pop punk world and was listening to a lot of Blink-182 and MXPX and stuff like that. So it's almost it worked in reverse order, where when I first started playing music, I was trying to emulate Blink-182 and bands like that. And the further I've gone in my career, I'm, trying to pull more influence from the earlier stuff, the Tom Pettys and the Fleetwood Macs of the world. But as you mentioned, a lot of that sort of late 90s, radio rock influence definitely snuck in there quite a bit.
Yeah, I love that. Those are great references, by the way. The top of the top classic rocks. I love it.
Yes, as Floridians, we love ourselves some Tom Petty.
He's the best.
Yes. So, I Won't Care How You Remember Me is coming out on Friday. We are super excited for it. So, we were kind of wondering, what was your favorite track on the new album? And, what is it about that track that you're just this is it, this is awesome?
I think my favorite switches from week to week. We've had a lot of time to kind of sit and reflect on this record, because we recorded it in late summer of 2019, and the world has changed quite a bit since then. But we've had a lot of time to listen back and reflect on it. But I think the one that I'm most excited for people to hear is the title track. It's the first track on the record, and it's sort of the sonic introduction to what the listener can expect. And it starts off with just acoustic guitar and one voice, and it just gradually builds up until the end, where it's this very sort of dramatic, big, loud sort of ending, and then it ends pretty abruptly. So it's just this sort of journey that it takes you on first thing when you start listening to the record. And we're pretty big on the whole listening experience of the full album, listening to it from start to finish. So in the context of the track listing, I think it's a really interesting way to introduce the whole record. And then just one other cool thing about it is our friend Andy Hull from Manchester Orchestra sang some harmony vocals on it too. And he's one of my musical heroes, so that was a really cool thing to get to have him be a part of it.
Oh, well, that's awesome. I am excited to hear it then with this build-up. I'm ready.
Awesome.
And also, you mentioned that you guys recorded this record in in 2019, and you guys have had time to meditate on it. So I'm kind of curious to know about that, because just sitting on a project, when were you guys intending to release it? Were you guys intending to actually have this much time to kind of sit with it, or did the happenings of the world kind of shake everything up and change everything?
Yeah, our plans got very much shifted around. So So we recorded it, like I said, in late summer of 2019, and then we went on tour for a couple weeks, and we got back, at the end of December, and we were starting to get mixes back, and so it was like basically early 2020, like January 2020, when we had the record mixed, and we were still thinking that it was going to come out, probably in the fall, and we would go on tour and do the classic touring cycle that usually follows a record being released. And we were just seeing a lot of stuff rapidly changing in the news, and we were like, well, maybe if we can't tour yet, we should push this back a little bit. Not knowing that touring would be just fully out of the picture for over a year, unfortunately. So we decided we didn't want to wait too long, so we just pushed it into early 2021, which was long enough to wait on it, but we knew that even if we couldn't tour, we would just have to get creative and stay motivated in other ways. So we channeled a lot of that energy into making our own music videos and putting together a record release live performance show. That's all going to be on the internet, but however we can still connect with people in the current climate, we're gonna figure out how to do that.
Awesome. Yeah. So to follow up kind of with that, so given that, as you were saying, everything we've been forced to kind of go remote, and I've seen that you've done YouTube performances and Instagram Lives, things like that for performances. I know you have some of those actually coming up, but what is it that you miss most about live performances and that feeling of people actually physically being there in front of you? And I mean, just about that experience in general, what do you think sticks out as, oh, I wish I could do this right now?
Yeah, there's just this connection of, this human connection that you get from sharing the same space as people and performing and having it be sort of interactive, and you get that immediate sort of feedback. When you kind of perform on the internet, it's like, yeah, maybe you'll get some nice comments or whatever after the fact, but at a live performance, you get that immediate connection with the people that you're sharing that space with. So it's wild how long it's been since we've played a show like that. So it's the longest that we've gone since we started playing music without playing shows. So it's very strange, but we're hoping to get back to it whenever it's safe and possible.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can only really imagine how that must be for bands. And it's a conversation that I have to have on multiple occasions, just across the board, talking to different musicians. But it's just you can never really fully grasp just how you go from performing and expressing yourself one way, and then it just being completely cut off. It's just really wild and really strange. But
very, very strange.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But outside of the sort of glum of 2020, there was a lot that was going on musically still, right? And there was still a lot of releases. And so we were still curious as to know what some of your favorite releases of 2020 were, and if they would have influenced, kind of either your production process or just your life in any way,
My good friend Dave is one of my favorite singer-songwriters. His project is called Cave People, and he put out a record called Looking that is just amazing. It's so good. We've toured together in the past, and he's just really inspiring to me as a songwriter. I would say the new Bartees Strange record, Live Forever, is definitely the one from last year that's really stuck with me. And I think it's just this beautiful wide span of different music styles, just perfectly blended together. And it's just inspiring anytime someone can do that, and it's so seamless and just so cohesive. So probably those two records have been my favorite of the last year.
Yeah, we're actually spinning that Barty Strange record right now on the station still, and it's like so sick because I just like love, like you said, there's so much like in that record that you can kind of. I'm glad that I got to add it to the station because we're an indie station, so there's not a whole lot, but like still, it's like experimental enough, but just like fantastic with the musicianship and the production. It's
incredible. He's such an amazing talent, and his voice is so cool and so versatile, and yeah, 100%. It's a really inspiring record.
Totally.
So getting off the topic of 2020, you and Tiger Shaw have been involved in the music scene since 2005 when y'all were in high school. So we were kind of curious as to how do you think the state of the alternative music industry has changed from when y'all were first starting out to now, 15, 16 years later?
It's totally different just in how I think streaming has changed how people consume music. Back in the day, it was like we were just kind of getting into the idea of like putting music on the internet, and it was still about burning demo CDs and handing them out at shows, and getting our CD pressed, and then eventually I remember how surreal it felt to get actually pressed onto vinyl. So there was like this just big shift between like releasing music mostly on a physical format, and then now like kind of figuring out how to cater to just the like streaming dominated music industry. And I think that it's sort of like having everything on demand is really cool. It's great to have all like the options at your fingertips, but it's sort of like can spoil the experience of listening to an album and kind of like giving a song your full attention, knowing that you can switch to a different song at any time. And like I think that it I don't know, it sort of oversimplifies the process of like experiencing music. And when you're listening on a physical format or on a record, like it's not easy to skip to the next song or anything like that. So you're more in it, you're more like focused on it, I think. So just kind of watching that whole shift has been the biggest thing that's kind of changed. And I think for us, we're not the type of band to like try to chase like the current trend. Like we've never been the biggest band in the world. Like we've always really kind of just tried to do things in a way that felt authentic and natural for us. So we've been really lucky enough to be able to continue growing the band little by little after all these years. But we've kind of just made sure we did things in the way that we wanted to. So we still write music the same way. We still release it the same way. But, there's definitely some merit to like, releasing things in maybe more of a hip hop format where you drop singles like kind of out of nowhere and just like keep like constantly releasing content. But we just need to make sure that content comes from the same sort of place of like we're creating art that we love and stand behind. So it's sort of just like adapting to that new sort of model and making sure we do it in a way that works for us authentically.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of as you were saying, experiencing music is such a personal experience. I mean, I would say, it's probably different for everyone. And, speaking personally, for me at least, there's something almost different in a way of picking up a CD at a store and, putting it in your car, flipping a record, things like that. And I agree totally. I think it's so personal, and I'm glad to hear that authenticity, you found a way to make it translate, even as technology is kind of, unimaginable now compared to 2005. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And so really quick, we're going to wrap this up, but we were really super curious about, for one, Twin Peaks, because we're super huge fans of Twin Peaks at the station, and we've noticed some Twin Peaks references throughout like your merch and like your visuals, your lyrics and stuff, and we were just really curious to know what role they play in your band and what they mean to you.
I think that throughout the career of the band, we've always been fans of the show, And we've always been fans of the kind of like the overarching theme of duality throughout the show, and how like things have multiple meanings. And we've always like tried to like kind of use that when we're writing music, when things can be open for interpretation or have multiple meanings or hidden meanings. So that kind of theme has always been interesting to me anyway. And it's also just such an amazing show to get just like kind of lost in that world, and get fully absorbed in like the visuals of it, and the sound and the feel of it. It feels like very transformative when you watch it. So I think it's just really inspiring as a work of art. That it has such a strong realized vision and can just fully transport you to somewhere else.
100%. A 10 out of 10 agree. David Lynch is a genius at like transporting people and just like, it's crazy how this most surreal situations can like feel so like potent in my mind. I don't know. It's just insane. And I love that you guys just like have that a connection to it as well. We just love that.
It's an amazing show.
It is. And then one more question. If you were to pull up your Spotify right now, what was the last thing you listened to on Spotify?
Oh, what is the last thing I listened to? I think it was, I recently got the Tom Petty Wildflowers special edition vinyl box set, and it's amazing. And I've been really getting into like the demo, like the home recording versions and the non-album tracks. So I think I had that pulled up on my Spotify because I was driving around the other day, and I think that's the last thing that I was like really diving into and listening to. That's the last thing I can think of.
Amazing.
Without actually going in and checking.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great that's a great person to be like still on your Spotify right now. So 10 out of 10 answer. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Thanks so much for tuning in to our interview with Ben Walsh from Tiger's Jaw here at Spinnaker Radio.
Be sure to check out Tiger's Jaw's new album, I Won't Care How You Remember Me, coming out on all streaming platforms this Friday, March 5th.